I am the voice, the narrator of the personal chronicles written by an administrator of ritual within the Gustatory Guild. I will read to you from these chronicles during the evening. I invite you to follow along with me. Please open your books and go to page 26. As he was escorted through vast halls, ventricles, and labyrinthine corridors, intestines of the institution, he thought of what he had swallowed during the admissions interview. It scared him because he knew his life was at risk whenever he chose to ingest unknown matter. But so too was his place in the universe, his essence, his nature, in short, his entire identity, he thought. An object inadvisedly incorporated may contaminate him, insidiously transform him from within, possess him, or rather depossess him of himself. As they continued deeper inside, he began to hear drone-like sounds, distorted voices, and muffled chants. It sounded like a lament. Screaming voices in the distance heightened his anxiety. He couldn't think straight. Were the sounds only in his head? Was he still acting of his own volition? A long walk deeper into the inner realms of the complex would eventually lead him to the chamber of rituals. Please flip your book to page 7 on second paragraph. Ever since he was a child, the political landscape of the realm had been in turmoil. Hypnotech merchant corporations had, through their software's seamless integration into people's psyches, made it possible to implant corporate populist dogmas among the masses, thereby outcompeting representational democracy as a political form. Eventually, this led to leaders of corporate conglomerates gaining power, and in so doing, they could actualize the Cynthian chapters. The chapters were a set of repressive bureaucratic protocols forcibly imposed by these corporate feudal lords who had become the ruling class at the time. Many institutions throughout the realm were still trying to resist the pressure of bureaucratic overreach to continue serving the evolving needs of the people for whom they were established, while others had surrendered to the dogmas of the ruling class, rendering them impotent as public institutions, but excellent as factories of conservative corporal nationalism. Please flip your book to page 10, second paragraph. As an administrator of ritual, he was trained in insurgent operations, specifically the craft of performing gustatory rituals, a very subtle form of revolt that employs performative bodily practices, ritualistic behavior, and symbolic gestures to negotiate the admission of potentially transformative matter. For example, new knowledge systems or radical material agency into institutions. This was done neither to stabilize them nor to dismantle them entirely, but to allow that matter to potentially intervene in the complexities of collective life through a continuous process of questioning and reconfiguring institutional forms as sites of negotiation and collective experimentation. The only way to imagine this clearly was to picture institutions as bodies and the influx of matter into them as their eating habits. This was a field of study he advanced both theoretically and through practical application during his time with the resistance. His dedicated work developing these commensal rituals earned him a place in the fifth horizon of the Gustatory Guild, a clandestine para-congregation operating as a sleeper cell within the Bureau. The services of his cell were activated under Article 1.6, Substance, Arrival/Taxonomy. Please follow along with me and go to page 15, line 8 in your books. In the creeds of the guild, metaphor and poetic fabulation were used as devices to turn hopes and dreams first into language, then into ideas, and finally into more tangible action. The use of metaphor was a way to help give a name to the nameless, so it could be thought. He felt on a roll, wanting to keep preaching about the guild, as he always did when he met someone he could trust. Then Mo Lena Jason abruptly interrupted him, whispering out of the blue, "We are what we eat. We are what we eat." He said, "What if the notion of oral histories isn't at all a history passed down by word of mouth through generations, but an account in writing, chewed and ingested orally? Be careful which words you eat, son. Eating written words is a sacrificial code. Some words will keep on living inside of you and crawl through your body like intestinal worms or Trojan horses beyond your control." Molina Jason concluded his whispering monologue by saying that he once heard the dark green oil from the wormwood plant is preferred for killing intestinal linguistic Trojans. The dessert was cold, soft, and smooth to the touch. The soft content was layered in a transparent receptacle, one layer of white and one layer of dark green. When he took the first bite, sweetness, but also an almost unpleasant experience of bitterness filled his nose and mouth. Please go to page 17, second paragraph. As part of training to become fluent in the phenomenological vocabularies of ritual within the guild, you had to construct and choreograph your own ritualistics. Every administrator has their own practice that mustn't be copied by anyone else. He had made the use of 4 liminal forces the core of his practice. The forms were chosen for their diverse material composition and ability to enter the body through distinct pathways. The forms he had designed were a tincture, a fluid, a comestible, and a vapor. The tincture would be an essential oil with a pungent scent applied to the body and absorbed through the skin. The fluid was drunk from a glass, the comestible eaten, and the vapor inhaled. Please follow along with me on page 24, second paragraph. He began to reason with himself and thought that institutions like omnivores could never know whether any unknown matter in their mouths would act as a nutrient or a toxin when incorporated into their internal ecology. So, would the institution admit him to become part of itself by letting him enter? He thought of the chewing mouth and the admissions interview as liminal spaces for becoming. Admitted, swallowed, or rejected, spat out. The decision whether to admit or spit out would have existential consequences for the institution's future as an organism/organization. Hence, the anxiety associated with it. He thought, on the one hand, needing variety, the omnivore and the institution are inclined towards diversification, innovation, exploration, and change, which can be vital to their survival. But on the other hand, they have to be careful, mistrustful, conservative in their eating. Any new unknown food is a potential danger, and this creates a paradox. The omnivore's paradox lies in the tension, the oscillation between the two poles of neophobia, which is prudence, fear of the unknown, resistance to change, and neophilia, the tendency to explore, the need for change, novelty, variety. He thought that every omnivore and institution is subject to a kind of double bind between the familiar and the unknown, monotony and change, security and variety. He asked himself if there is perhaps a fundamental anxiety in man's relationship to foods, resulting not only from the need to distrust new or unknown foods, but also, and more importantly, from the tension between the two contradictory and equally constraining imperatives of the omnivore's paradox. As the admissions interview unfolded, the institution was chewing, sucking, tasting, and nibbling on him until it was finally over. Eventually, he was swallowed, and as any unknown matter entering a body, in that instance, he became the pharmacon, an embodied, ambiguous, dual possibility, poison or cure.